Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Rani Sponnet, and I will be the mistress of ceremony for this evening's launch of this cohort of the Pink Parliament. I will be until about 20 people get into the Zoom call. We have about 17, and I don't want to start before everyone arrives, so I'm just giving them a little grace period. Okay, so we're at 18, so in a few. All right. Okay, so specially invited guest, Dr. Peggy Antrobus, who's the co-founder of the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, Dame Billy Miller, Ambassador at Large and Plenipotentiary for Barbados, Senator Dr. Christina Hines, head of the Department of Government, Sociology, Social Work, and Psychology at the Cave Hill campus of the University of the West Indies, Professor Aaron Kamushkisha, Ruth J. Simmons, Professor of Africana Studies, Smith College, Professor Alyssa Trott, who is a Professor of Caribbean Studies at the New College and the Director of Women and Gender Studies, representatives from the High Commissioner of Canada in Barbados, representatives from the Barbados Association of the Muslim Ladies, Pink Parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my distinct honor to be your mistress of ceremony. My name is Rani Sponnet. I'm a former Pink parliamentarian, and I'm thrilled to be with you this evening. Okay, we will now have the national anthem of Barbados. Lovely. We also have one other person. I'd like to extend that welcome. All right, next we have our opening remarks by the Director of Life in Leggings, Caribbean Alliance Against Gender-Based Violence, and the Project Manager of Pink Parliament, Ms. Ronald King.
Thank you, Renise. It is a pleasure to welcome you all here today on International Day of the Girl and for the official launch for Cohort 4. What can I say? When we first began, we had a vision of creating a safe space for young women and girls to be able to discuss politics, which can be sometimes very taboo in public spaces for women, And generally, the conversation around women in politics can be very hostile. And that's something that's evidenced by plenty of research and the lived experiences of the women who've come before us. And so what I want to do is not give you a long speech. I want to jump right into it. and let you hear for yourself the phenomenal women and girls who make up this initiative, who without them, this initiative would not exist. And, they are trailblazers in their own right. And I can't sing their praises long enough. So now I hand back over to Miss Renee Storr.
Thank you so much, Ronell. Next, we have remarks by Hussein Harding King, who is a trustee of Life in Leggings, the Caribbean Alliance Against Gender-Based Violence. Over to you.
A blessed good evening to everyone. Protocols having been established. Today is the International Day of the Girl, and I want to welcome all the participants of the cohort for 2022 to 2023. It has been said and proven that the most valuable resource of any nation is always its youth. Therefore, with this being said, it gives us great pleasure at Life in Leggings and Pink Parliament to welcome this cohort for 2022 to 2023. We are overwhelmed by the number of persons who have registered for this year, 21, and this is a significant figure. For us, what this represents is 21 young people who will be able to go back into their communities and share the knowledge they have gained with their peers. It also represents 21 young persons who will be able to go back to their communities and to advocate for positive change. 21 young persons who we hope will, after the end of the cohort, go back into the communities and reach out and also be a part of the political landscape in whichever way they can positively impact it. We are thankful for those who have come on board to make this initiative possible for these young persons. And as I said before, our nation is well put forward when we have positive young people who are out there making a difference. The cohort runs for a period of 6 months, and we encourage the participants to be engaging, to be positive, and to make use of the resources and the opportunities that have been afforded to them. Who knows, we may be training the next female Prime Minister of Barbados. We look forward to the positive reports at the end of the initiative, and we look forward to new cohorts in the future coming forward based on the positive reports that they put forward. I am sure at the end of the initiative and the training that they will not be the same, because a mind that has been stretched will never go back to its original size. Make full use of the opportunities, but in the process, have fun. And we look forward to your positive reports at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Next on the agenda is a performance by Ashley Burnett. Ashley Burnett is querying, and carrying the Caribbean forward. This Trinbagonian-born writer and advocate is a 2020 Women Deliver Young Leader and a part of the Young Leaders Program until 2022. She is the founder of the Feminine Caribbean, an intersectional Caribbean feminist non-governmental organization where she leads a dynamic and passionate core team and volunteers that uses education, social good, and conversation to advance gender justice in the Caribbean. Currently, Ashley is the chair of the Caribbean Women in Leadership Trinidad and Tobago National Chapter and a CIWIL board member. She's also a member of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust Network. Additionally, she has recently been appointed as the advisor to the Global Advisory Team for the Caribbean region at FREDA, the Young Feminist Fund. So put your virtual hands together for the performance by Ashley Burnett.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Happy International Day of the Girl, and of course, congratulations to the class of 2022. I'm really excited and delighted to share this poem with you all. I hope you enjoy and I hope it resonates. When the universe became itself, it saw you, dressed in whatever you chose to make magic and to expand yourself into many possibilities. Your birth is deeply rooted in color, to hold you up, to shatter glass ceilings and bring each other up. A story spanned across the earth, and you can paint with all the colors of the wind, the earth, your canvas. The vibrancy of a mixture of every shade and circumstance, the color is you. It is the gravity that holds her together, the voice that stems from inside that blooms words big enough to turn your blues to greens with all its sunshine. It is unity. It is difference. It is a palette of vibrance and color and power to paint you, brighter when she feels dull, to paint a masterpiece, telling a story of those who haven't found their paintbrush, their color, their space in the canvas yet. Until then, we leave a space in this palette for you. We leave space on this canvas for you. After all, these colors can never be as vibrant, can never pop, can never work without you. Thank you so much.
That was riveting. That was quite the impactful poem. Thank you so much to Ashley Burnett. Next on our agenda, we have Ayana Robinson, who is a Pink alumna. Ayana will be giving us a speech. And here's Ayana's bio. Ayana Robinson is an 18-year-old Barbadian scholar with a passion for public speaking, advocacy, and philanthropy. She is a polyglot as she studied Spanish and French in secondary school and researches linguistics in her free time. She is passionate about equality for all persons in society, especially women, girls, children, and other marginalized groups. At her alma mater, the Queen's College School, she was the president of the Literacy and Debating Society for 2 years. The Literary and Debating Society seeks to encourage students to pursue debating and public speaking. In 2019, as leader of the debating team, she won the National Secondary Schools Debating Championships for her school. Congratulations, Ayana. Ayana currently serves as an independent senator in the Barbados National Youth Parliament under the Ministry of Youth, Sport, and Community Empowerment. She's also a Pink alumna from the third cohort of Pink Parliament, which is an initiative by the Life in Leggings, the Caribbean Alliance Against Gender-Based Violence. Additionally, Ayana is pursuing an undergraduate degree in law at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. She recently was given the distinct privilege of being selected as a Young A 2022 Youth Delegate. Young A, as I'm calling it, which is hosted by Bridging the Gap Ventures, is the largest international festival for impact. So pay keen attention to Ayana's speech.
Okay, protocol having been established, good evening, everyone. It is really a pleasure to be here with all of you this evening on International Day of the Girl. And I'd like to extend a very special welcome to all of the Pink parliamentarians from the fourth cohort. You're in for such a wonderful experience, and I'm so excited for you. So this evening, I have the opportunity to speak on a topic that I'm very passionate about. So I hope that the speech is enjoyable for all of you. Well, you don't go and try and pick up a book. I hope you know your schoolwork, like you know them songs. I'm sure that as Barbadians, we have all heard these phrases from the elders within our family. This is not the case because our elders have an enduring passion for literature or a disdain for music. On the contrary, our elders recognize the immense power which education holds in our society. Indeed, UNESCO describes education as the most sustainable investment because of its ability to promote equality through opportunities. It is for this reason that at the dawn of our nationhood, against the backdrop of centuries of colonialism and oppression of the masses, Barbados decided to invest in education. The Right Excellent Errol Walton Barrow strongly believed that education should be free and accessible to all. This conviction has not departed from the hearts and minds of Barbadians, which is evidenced by our government's expenditure of over 16% of the GDP to facilitate the delivery of universal free education up to the tertiary level and the upkeep of our educational institutions. Over the years, Barbados' education system has been the source of much attention as we hope to reap the rewards of our investment. It cannot be denied that education has benefited many Barbadians, from those who achieved the feat of passing for the prestigious older secondary schools at the tender age of 11, to those who have won the lucrative Barbados Scholarship and Barbados Exhibition. Nevertheless, the government of the day's declaration of an impending education revolution is seemingly a recognition that our education system is not facilitating success for all. It is of the utmost importance that we utilize this opportunity to transform our education system from one which is characterized by a hyper-focus on the achievement of a minority while ignoring the educational needs of the majority. The reality is that many of our children have special educational needs, are unable to excel with rote memorization, and are also unable to think critically. Education for All is a global movement headed by UNESCO, which seeks to satisfy the learning needs of all individuals. We cannot achieve this until we begin to focus on students with special educational needs. The crux of the matter is that the majority of these students often struggle with reading, writing, and doing mathematical calculations, which are fundamental to academic success. The best ways to ensure that these students can realize their full potential are early detection of learning disabilities and the development of special education programs. In order to achieve this, I suggest that the Parliament enacts an act similar to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in the United States. Under this act, all children with learning disabilities are entitled to receive free special educational services in public schools, including an evaluation to discover the problems facing the child and the help of a team of special educators who focus on building the strengths of the child and teaching them ways to compensate for their weaknesses. Furthermore, we rely too heavily on rote memorization. We expect 11-year-old children who have most likely never purchased anything other than items at a supermarket or a village shop to answer questions on hire purchase. Realistically, the only way that the child can possibly answer a question is through rote memorization. However, the Amara-Berry system steps in to ameliorate this issue. Imagine, if students were learning about loans, they would set up an invitation bank and another student would enter and undergo the process of acquiring a loan. Such processes would benefit students through a deeper understanding of the subject and greater social skills. To continue, we live in a society where children are expected to be seen and not heard. Yet, we put them in a classroom, expose them to a lecture, and wonder why they cannot apply critical thinking skills in an examination question. You cannot expect a child to comment in an essay if they are not encouraged to comment in real life. In order to achieve this, I propose implementation of the Paulo Freire system. Under this Brazilian system, children are encouraged to express their opinions on what they are taught and to engage in discussion. Hereby, they are encouraged to participate in critical thinking skills, which will not only aid them greatly in examinations, but will aid them in tackling real-world problems as well. In closing, our education system has enhanced the lives of numerous Barbadians. Regrettably, our education system fails to promote the success of all students. I believe that we should grasp this imminent opportunity to revolutionize education with both hands. The creation of an education system for all through aid for students with special educational needs and greater catering to different learning systems could further enable all Barbadian students to experience the joy of success in education achievement. Thank you.
Excellent speech by Miss Ayana Robinson, very well versed, very well researched. Next on the agenda is another In Her Words by Shade Smith. Shade Smith is a 21-year-old goal-oriented UB student pursuing her undergraduate degree in economics and accounting. She has a passion for service and enjoys volunteering whenever she gets the opportunity. She is the current president of the Young Economics Association and is the UB U Report ambassador. Along with having a love for service, she loves politics and enjoys debating on different issues as she is a youth parliamentarian. She's also a former Pink parliamentarian and the current president of the League of Young Socialist UB chapter, the Barbados Labour Party youth arm. In her spare time, she enjoys watching the proceedings of Parliament, and she also spends quality time with family and friends. She lives by the philosophy that anything worth doing is worth doing well, hence why she strives to put her best foot forward and give her very best in everything she does. Shade is also a member of the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network, CYEN. CYEN allows her to gain more knowledge on how to protect the environment, and it provides her with the opportunity to volunteer and advocate on pressing issues such as climate change. Give a virtual hand to Shade.
Hello, Cohort 4. My name is Shade Smith, and I'm extremely happy to be one of your guest speakers this evening. Now, I hope that you do forgive me for being unable to actually join you during the program, but I do hope that this video makes up for my absence. I hope that you're enjoying the program thus far, and I urge you to stay tuned for all of the wonderful things that are in store for you. As mentioned before, it is indeed a pleasure to be here. As I sit here and I gaze into the camera, only seeing my reflection, I'm overcome with emotion. I'm emotional because a year ago, I was sitting here in this virtual space where you sit now. I had no clue what was lying ahead for me. Simply enrolling in this phenomenal program changed my life forever, but not only forever, but for the better. I went from being a girl with a dream to a young lady chasing after it. Pink Parliament placed me in rooms I never thought I'd be in and allowed me to interact with some brilliant minds. It really was the first step of a journey of 1,000 miles. Pink Parliament was so much more to me than just meeting others. It was a realization. I remember my first ride home from my first Pink Parliament session. That day, we learned the difference between gender and sexuality. Many people don't know the difference. As a result, I was able to educate my family and close friends about the difference. We also learned about the underrepresentation of women in politics. Now that was an eye-opener for me. That session caused me to take a course at UE that semester called Women in Politics. I just had to learn more. On this International Day of the Girl Child, I want to center my presentation on the underrepresentation of women in politics, subsequently highlight some disadvantages women face in politics, and briefly touch on the importance of women in politics. Now, I think that's appropriate as I'm a youth parliamentarian. Women as an integral element of society who have been historically marginalized and excluded confront persistent political challenges and vulnerabilities in political and electoral processes, and are hence hesitant to engage. The stereotyping of women, gender bias, traditional customs, and religious taboo all contribute to the widespread belief that women leadership can never succeed. Women who participate in politics, particularly female candidates, are frequently targets of misinformation, offensive discourse on social media, with the goal of pressuring them to leave politics. And I will say that again. With the goal of pressuring them to leave politics. When this was brought to my attention in class, I was in complete awe. I never really stopped to think about how media houses had a role to play in the discrimination of female candidates and their detriments to the candidates' political campaigns. Now, I just want you to take a moment and really reflect. Have you seen, now we just had an election back in January. I want you to take a moment to reflect. Was there anything during that campaign that you saw a negative headline, whether it be on social media, on Instagram to be specific, or in the paper, as it relates to a female candidate? And have you ever stopped to think about how that headline caused pain, caused hurt to that female candidate, or subsequently caused that candidate not to want to participate in politics anymore? Just think about it. I never thought about it before. Something that also stood out to me was women's failure to satisfy the financial requirements of running for office. including advertising and marketing. As to the difficulties of moving beyond the electorate. So basically, if you're a female and you don't have that financial backing, your campaign will not be one that is satisfactory, that is successful. You must have that financial backing, and sometimes female candidates don't have that financial backing. Political parties either do not offer funding or provide insufficient financial assistance to female candidates, even those who were elected via the quota system. So sometimes even candidates who were successfully selected for these positions to run for office, they don't have that financial backing from their financial party. That is something significant. Wow, we truly endure a lot, huh? I know you probably are thinking that, because I surely am. But women's participation in politics is very important, and I'll tell you why. According to research, women policymakers prioritize issues such as healthcare and the environment. And we can see why prioritizing the environment is extremely important now that we have a climate change crisis and we are experiencing rising sea levels, extreme temperatures. Increased representation of women in elected office is associated with anti-corruption efforts, and countries where women hold more political power are less likely to go to war and commit human rights violations. Political leadership by women is crucial and critical for free democratic societies that are more stable and successful for everybody. That is why women's political leadership is vital, both internationally and locally. It would be remiss of me to say that there's no increased presence of women participation in politics. According to new data, women occupy the roles of heads of state of government in 22 countries, up from 20 countries in 2020. As of the 1st of January 2021, 5.9% of elected heads of state, 9 out of 152, and 6.7% of heads of government, 13 out of 193, are women. Europe is the region with the most countries led by women. 5 out of 9 heads of state and 7 out of 13 heads of government. The Nordic countries of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Norway are all currently led by women. And of course, here in Barbados, our Prime Minister is female and our Deputy Prime Minister is female. We do have female who sit both in the lower and upper house. But if we are serious about reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, we must encourage more female leadership. And I'll leave you with a quote. The female political voice is personal. It is intimate. It is caregiving and life enhancing. It's about bringing more love, care, and justice into this world. It's also fierce and determined, by Tabby Bibble. So I encourage you to take what you learn from this program and make the best of it. Attend most, if not all, of your sessions. Capture opportunities that will arise from being a part of this program and network, because those connections that you make will be very beneficial in the long run. But most importantly, I urge you to take up leadership roles in society. It does not necessarily have to be in politics, but be that manager, be that supervisor, even that CEO. More women are needed in leadership positions to ensure that we have equitable societies. And I will say this again. If we are serious about meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, we must encourage more female leadership, more female women participation in politics. So I urge you young ladies a part of cohort 4. Take all the opportunities, take all the knowledge that you will gain from being a part of this program and use it wisely. Take up those leadership positions without fear, because the future is female. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
That was a lovely speech given by Shade Smith. Moving swiftly along, we have Lisa Yearwood, who is a 17-year-old Harrison College student who loves to sing. She's a sixth form student who's in her final year studying Cape history, economics, sociology, and Caribbean studies. Growing up, Lisa's love for music was always there, whether it was through dance, drama, singing, or for her interest in steel pan and other various instruments. Lisa strives towards excellence in all that she does, and she aspires to enter the field of economics or investment banking. Additionally, she seeks to pursue representative politics in the future. Aside from her academic endeavors, Lisa is a member of the Pink Parliament, the 100 Voice Choir with the National Cultural Foundation, Harrison College's Debating Society, and Key Club International, where she sits on the district board for service projects in the Caribbean Atlantic District. She is also a NIFCO medalist and a regular finalist in the Richard Stout Teen Talent Competition. So please turn your attention to Ms. Lisa Yearwood.
Protocol already being established. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to be here this evening to speak to everyone viewing, whether on Zoom or the live stream. To begin, Pink Parliament has taught me so much about how to stand up as a young lady on issues I am passionate about. And today I will be speaking on a matter so very close to my heart: access to cultural programs for everyone. To begin, how many of you have been shaken in your boots when you heard the prices of some art camps here in Barbados, the Caribbean, and internationally? It is a known fact that many persons will spend their last dollar to allow their child to attend these camps and to be trained by the best of the best. However, what is the case when a parent simply does not have the financial capability to afford these camps, programs, or weekly classes? Some parents have to sit and watch their child's natural talent go to waste. Don't get me wrong. I know that many public schools across the island offer free dance, singing, and acting lessons, but this is not every school. There are many people who will say, you only see that at certain schools, and this is a problem that needs to be addressed. Therefore, we must begin developing our communities. Every child and every community at large deserves equal opportunity. Subsequently, I implore that we use community centers across the island to not only facilitate sporting activities, but to allow persons who are interested in the arts to be granted meaningful opportunities. For example, a great initiative here in Barbados is the Pylons Creative Workshop. This program has aided in the development of several youths in Barbados and the cultural development of several communities as well. Therefore, this should be an example to many. Everyone interested in the arts should be able to follow their dreams without the financial bumps that may come along the way. Moreover, you may be wondering, how does this not only benefit the individual, but Barbados and the Caribbean at large? I answer by saying this: music and culture are what we are known for. Living in a dependent tourism diaspora, developing world-class citizens in every sector and field markets Barbados and the Caribbean to the rest of the world in ways that we cannot even begin to imagine. The orange economy, also known as the creative economy, if properly taken care of, directly benefits our overall economic prosperity. Therefore, allowing for economic development and for us to have more government revenue to facilitate the social benefits to our citizens, not only culturally, but essential benefits such as free healthcare and free education. Look at what reggae has done for Jamaica, for example. We can replicate such attraction here in Barbados through the development of our dance industry, where we create world-renowned tutors and dancers who may attract persons from across the world to attend our shows, our camps, and even our schools, just for example. Also, with music, we can attract persons to Barbados and the wider Caribbean through our musical talents, as we have seen with the success of Rihanna and her international recognition. Subsequently, this list goes on and on, including fashion, culinary arts, and many, many more. In conclusion, I implore you to reflect on what I have said and begin to think of ways in which you, as an individual, can begin to create change in your community. Therefore, dear policymakers, ministers, the National Cultural Foundation, and additional persons involved in the improvement of our cultural sector, I implore you to look into the points I have made and make a positive difference in our economies and our communities, both culturally and socially. These changes would assist in the diversification of our economy and the skill sets of our youth. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Donna Lisa, for that very impactful speech. I personally, it struck a chord with me because I was once a part of Dance in Africa, and I also sing. I do a little bit of singing. I first recorded a song this season. I had a soca song for the first time. So the orange economy is something that I'm very interested in. So I'm very glad that you touched on that point. Next on the agenda, the final in her word speaker is Gaiza Archer Mears. Gaiza Archer Mears is a 20-year-old aspiring attorney at law, currently pursuing her Bachelor's of Law degree at the University of the West Indies, Cape campus. She is passionate about reparations for Caribbean descendants of the Africans who were enslaved She is passionate about reparations for Caribbean descendants of the Africans who were enslaved, sexuality educational reform, building Barbados's jurisprudence, and climate change, and many other topics. Leadership has been and continues to be the major part of Gaiza's life. During her years at Combermere, she held the positions of prefect in full form and eventually held the school captain role of the academic year of 2020 to 2021. Gaiza also revived the Students' Council, and she held the position of the Minister of Academics, aided the pinch of the school board for school-wide Wi-Fi, ran the school's social media pages, good job, and organized the student attendance and apparel for BSAC. Gaiza is currently a member of EUB's Debating Society, JCI Barbados, the third cohort of Think Parliament, the Academic Development Group of Combermere Old Scholars, and a player on the hockey team, Dubai. Her work with the Combermere Old Scholars has allowed the team to provide scholarships for current students, and her work with Dubad has seen her in charge of their social media page. So give a virtual hand to Gaiza Archer Mears.
Good evening, everyone. Protocol already established. I'll be doing my speech today on sexuality education. So, sex is not a black and white issue, nor should it be a taboo subject. We all know that. Sexuality education is one of the most important things a young person can learn so they can understand themselves and make informed decisions regarding their bodies, decisions that can impact their lives well into adulthood. I'm going to be frank, because for far too long, we have tiptoed around this issue, leaving many young people disadvantaged and vulnerable to misinformation, resulting in teenage pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, etc. The fact of the matter is that we are all here because two people have sexual intercourse. Now that the elephant in the room has been addressed, maybe now we can have a more in-depth conversation. Sexuality education has been the topic of many a debate, especially in recent times. Many individuals believe that exposing young persons to comprehensive sexuality education may encourage sexual behavior. Thus, many Caribbean countries' education ministries have adopted a pro-abstinence approach. Unfortunately, this approach does not adequately address the needs of young people who are curious for information regarding their bodies, and as a result, turn to peers who are more likely to give them ill-informed advice, or to porn to provide them the sex education that their parents and schools refuse to provide them. What is worse is that within the public forum, This discussion has been skewed into a political and religious debate, which no longer addresses the real issues of young people's sexual and reproductive health. Many believers in this approach may find themselves in debates with promoters of a comprehensive, gender-sensitive, and rights-based sexuality education for all young people. Bracken and Cardinal, in their article for the International Journal of Sexual Health, lay out 3 approaches to sexuality education and give an insight into how a comprehensive approach combining all 3 would look. The first approach is the morality approach. Sexuality is used to pass on moral values and norms from the religion which is perceived to be prevailing in a given society. These values can make it difficult for teachers who have to balance a strong community resistance to sexuality education and students who want to know about their bodies. These persisting cultural and religious values often prevent adequate examination of certain topics, especially with respect to sexual diversity, non-marital sexual relationships, and LGBTQIA+ relationships. The second approach is the health approach, which takes an almost mechanical look at sexuality education. It seeks to educate young people on concerns about unwanted pregnancies, STIs, and HIV. While health is direly important to sexuality education, this approach falls short in addressing inequalities and tends to focus more on women, as they are seen as more susceptible or vulnerable to these issues. The usual exclusion of men from this approach robs young people of a full understanding of what an active sexual life entails, and these contraceptive responsibilities should not solely fall on women. Finally, the rights-based approach focuses on rights within society. Bracken and Cardinal once again state, and I quote, that it is important to support an education which is able to encompass all vulnerable groups, to question gender roles and social stereotypes, and enable all members of society to make choices about their sexuality, end quote. All of these approaches have their own benefits and challenges separately, but using the comprehensive approach, which combines them and takes the best qualities from all, allows for thorough teaching and learning. This type of sexuality education provides the setting for an in-depth, accurate curriculum that examines subjects such as relationships, sexual behavior, sexual and reproductive health, and society and culture. Comprehensive sexuality education gives young people the tools to feel more confident in making informed health-related decisions about their bodies, learn about bodily autonomy and consent, and to better understand how their bodies work. However, sexuality education is not the missing puzzle piece that will solve all sexual and reproductive health problems, but education is key and debatedly one of the most important steps to improving young people's sexual health and well-being. Now you may be saying, nice guys, fair enough, but how do we redefine the content of sexuality education? Well, one of the issues in our current system, which is relevant to us here today, is the lack of gender analysis. Many times, girls, if lucky, learn about periods, sexual intercourse, and pregnancy, but actual in-depth gender analysis is missed from the curriculum. Oftentimes, girls leave these classes with very little information to help them navigate relationships or provide them with an understanding as to why certain changes in their bodies are happening. One time too many, we have let our girls leave secondary school without any discussion of relevant topics like child sexual grooming, the gender dimensions of sex, or a comprehensive understanding of consent, leaving sexuality education relatively disconnected from the social context in which sex takes place. By allowing gender analysis in our curriculum, we allow young people to discuss issues such as the continuum between consensual and unconsensual sex, the pressure of masculinity norms for boys, and the lack of power in sexual decisions often faced by girls. The comprehensive outlook would educate on multiple methods of contraception outside of abstinence only, and aim to provide young people with information, tools, and critical thinking skills. It is important to note that this education cannot be regulated to schools only and would need the involvement of all social sectors to ensure the best futures for the youth. Us, as young people, must advocate for better, more comprehensive sexuality education services in or out of school, and then participate actively in these programs. While it is occasionally frowned upon, peer education also plays an important role in disseminating sexuality education messages. To end this discourse, I will leave you with my recommendations. The syllabus for guidance and HFLE classes need to be updated, and counselors trained on teaching young women and girls about consent, body odors, changes happening to their bodies, bodily autonomy, etc., instead of the pro-abstinence approach that has only done the youth of Barbados a disservice. Thank you.
A round of applause for Gaiza and her impactful speech. Now we have been steaming all the way through the agenda, but now we have come to the time to highlight the incoming cohort. So, congratulations to the incoming cohort. Here's a slideshow.
I've been running out of patience, playing way above my station. I must have forgot my place and got confused again. Cause I've been thinking for myself, see, standing up on my own 2 feet. But people really wanna shoot me down the down again. Oh no, what they say, honey, I should be afraid. Cause I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl. Got a brain and got a voice, I should leave it to the boys. Cause I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl. But I won't be quiet, I'm gonna breathe fire. Oh, you're never gonna tell me out, never gonna push me down. So it's time for a change, cause you'll never hear me say that I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl. Sick of being told I'm bossy, cause I won't let nobody boss me. People need to smell that coffee and put the past to bed. See, ladies need to be united. It ain't about who comes out highest. They only wanna see us divided to knock us down again. Oh no, what they say, honey, I should be afraid. Cause I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl. Got a brain and got a voice, I should leave it to the boys. Cause I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl. Be quiet, I'm gonna breathe fire. Oh, you're never gonna tell me out, never gonna push me down. So it's time for a change, cause you'll never hear me say that I'm just a girl, I'm just a girl.
I remember a few short years ago, that was me. So a formal welcome to the Pink Parliament family to the cohort of 2022 to 2023. Next on the agenda, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Elisa Trotz. Dr. Trotz is a mother to a son and 2 daughters. She is professor of Caribbean Studies at the New College and the director of Women and Gender Studies at the University of Toronto. She's also affiliate faculty at the Dame Nita Barrow Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, Cape Fold Campus, Barbados. And she's a gender expert on Gender Mainstreaming Committee of the West Indies, the University of the West Indies. Most recently, she is editor of The Point is to Change the World, Selected Writings by Andaye, which is a Pluto Press Black Critique series in 2022, with a Portuguese translation being released later this month by a Brazilian publisher. Dr. Elisa Trotz is an overseas resource member of the Red Thread, which is a grassroots women's organization in Guyana. And for the last 15 years, she has edited In the Diaspora, which is a weekly newspaper column in the Guyanese daily Stabroek News. So give a warm welcome to Dr. Elisa Trotz.
Thank you so much for, everyone can hear me? Yes, great. Thank you so much for that warm introduction and welcome, Renice. All protocols having been observed. Good evening to everyone. I'm joining you today from Toronto, where I'm grateful for, I'm just setting my stopwatch. Yeah, where I'm grateful for the opportunity to live and work on the lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Barbados actually is a second home to me in so many ways. My father made this country his home for about 8 years, and I have a long-standing relationship with the University of the West Indies. So I'm really delighted and truly honored to be among you, if only virtually tonight. So I'd like to congratulate the Pink Parliament for this really important initiative now in its 4th cycle, work that deservedly saw you honored last year with the Civicus Nelson Mandela Graça Machel Innovation Award for your contributions to democratizing governance systems and processes. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate this year's cohort, the class of 2023, which gathers under the visionary theme, Girls Can Lead, Redefining Leadership. And it was wonderful to hear the impressive speeches. I was like, y'all don't need to hear from me, by Ayana and Shade, Donalisa and Gaiza. Thank you so much for those inspiring words. But I want to especially shout out Life in Leggings tonight, which is the force behind Pink Parliament. And I'll come back to this later because it's movements that keep things going. It's movements that return us to what matters. It's movements that make change. And as you begin this journey, the most important lesson, I hope, is that you never forget that. The objectives of Pink Parliament, quote, to inspire and encourage young women to pursue careers in politics, and quote, to increase the participation of women in politics by providing participants with access to a network of dynamic women, end quote, are urgent and necessary. When we look at the fact that in the Caribbean right now, we can point to just one female Prime Minister, your own Mia Amor Motley, among 4 others, Prime Minister Eugenia Charles of Dominica, President Janet Jagan of Guyana, Prime Minister Kamala Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago, and Prime Minister Portia Simpson of Jamaica. You stand on the shoulders of women like Muriel Nellie Weeks, the first woman to contest a seat for the House of Assembly on your island, Dame Edna Bourne, the first woman to be elected as a member of the House of this Assembly, women like Dame Nita Barrow and Dame Billy Miller with extensive experience in national politics, but on the international stage as well. And you also build upon and extend the work of others who have gone before you, like the 51% Coalition in Jamaica, like the National Organization of Women in Barbados, Caribbean Women in Leadership, the Housewives Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and so many more. But what I find beautiful about your own initiative is how girl-centered it is, how it underlines the importance of youth and the new generations. It is important to recognize that the underrepresentation of women in parliament and in politics, despite the fact that women represent 50% and in some cases even more of the population, despite the long history of female-headed households in the region, this underrepresentation does not mean that women have not been involved all the way through. Women's presence, energies, commitments, sacrifices were absolutely central to the success of the anti-colonial struggles, which gave so many of our countries independence and the opportunity to run our own affairs. And yet, women were excluded, with leadership in public affairs and matters of the state assumed to be the business of men. Not European men anymore, but still men, what Trinidadian economist Lloyd Best might well call an exchange and not a real change. In an essay in her co-authored book on gender policy and politics in the Caribbean, Dr. Gabrielle Hussein has a telling quote from former Jamaican politician Maxine Henry Wilson that explicitly and disturbingly names some of the gender challenges of getting involved in public political life. And it's something that Renelle opened today with, talking about those difficulties. So the quote is, "The conduct of politics is very male in its orientation. For example, most of it is done on a Sunday. Women's domestic lives invariably suffer while they're attending to political matters on a Sunday. The campaign trail is rigorous, almost to the point of being dangerous. After a while, you begin to wonder, well, is this what I really want to do? The norms of the campaign trail sometimes embody experiences and behaviors that are not seen as feminine. I remember there was a case of a woman who did what all men did, which was go to the bar and drink. And then it was used against her in the campaign. There are cases where you hear of women being described as very loose and therefore that you should not support them, end quote. And that's from a former Jamaican politician. And I was just thinking about that when Sade was speaking with you tonight and talking about, you know, the same kinds of challenges in Barbados and asking you to think about the way in which the media responds differently to female and male politicians. An Indigenous woman from Guyana said a few weeks ago that in her village, her Tishao, Tishao is an Indigenous leader, but her Tishao, who happened to be a woman, said that you had to put on the bush cow skin. The bush cow, which is also known as a tapir, is this animal that has a very tough hide. So she said to Margaret, you have to put on your bush cow skin if you want to get involved in public facing work. And this quote from Henry Wilson and Sade's remarks just give us a good sense of how difficult that work can be. So I want to suggest that really understanding these challenges requires work in three directions. And the late Barbadian novelist George Lamming offered this proverb: the donkey works, but the horse gets promoted. The donkey works, but the horse gets promoted. So the first bit of work is that you have to make visible what the donkey does, make visible the stories of all those women who made change happen. And one person who I want to mention this evening is Hazel Brown, who was an absolutely incredible local and regional activist from Trinidad and Tobago who died a few weeks ago. Her life is an example to us all. And I would urge Pink parliamentarians to go and find out what you can about Hazel and what she did for the Caribbean, including advocating for higher levels of women's political participation. The second bit of work is to ask what happened to narrow that broad participation of women. How did they get shut out? Those women without whom the political landscape would never have been changed. And thirdly, to examine what the experiences of others tell you about the challenges to expect when the status quo is threatened, and about how to find strength in community as you navigate these obstacles. But, and for me, this is also key, it's never just about getting women into political office or parliament. The rise to prominence of the far right in several European countries, in parties that are increasingly xenophobic, some of them that even have roots to neo-Nazi organizations. So the rise to prominence of the far right and the women who play leading roles in many of these far right parties, whether it's Giorgia Meloni in Italy or Marine Le Pen in France, should actually make us pause and reflect on the difference between numerical representation, which is just increasing numbers of women, and substantive representation, which is really about changing things, about the difference that really makes a difference. And I know that last year's speaker, Professor Udine Barreto, addressed this in her remarks when she called on Pink parliamentarians not to divert your attention from dealing with, quote, the ongoing struggles of the vast majority of women who are struggling to make a living. And I loved how Donna Lisa, in her reflections this evening, thought about that in her comments about accessibility and the arts, right? So the difference that can make a difference. And that line is actually a line that I borrow from Angela Davis in a talk where she's talking about trying to think about all of the complex ways in which we come to understand ourselves as gendered subjects. And research across the region, coordinated by Gabrielle Hussein and Jane Parpert, found soberingly that an adversarial winner-take-all Westminster political system in the Caribbean makes it really difficult for women and men and others to work across the political aisle on gender issues, or to publicly stand up against misogyny or homophobia, for example, in their own political parties. In some fundamental respects, in fact, I actually think that Westminsterism is a colonial legacy that hangs around the neck of the Caribbean. We're way too small, we're way too intimate, and yet we continue to grapple with the imposition of a political system that makes us strangers from each other. That is a much bigger and more careful conversation to be had, but perhaps for you, Pink parliamentarians, part of your own work is to focus on what it means to meet each other across difference of political loyalty, of sexuality, of ideology, of age, of class, of race, what it means to meet across difference, to build something together. This is never easy work. It's never free of tensions. It's full of disagreements. Everyone will make mistakes, but you're all together stronger because the time and the effort and the labor has been taken to build connections between yourselves, to work through, to listen to, and to see each other's fears and insecurities, instead of deepening those insecurities to build walls that separate us. It is a capacity that we must practice always. And what I've been talking about tonight is kind of like, a funnel. You have all this energy, all this vitality, all of these women participating, and then it gets narrower and narrower, and only a few pass through. And I think we have to guard against this. And one of my own mentors, who's a Trinidadian feminist by the name of Jackie Alexander, asked these 4 questions, which for me are everything, and which I want to offer to the Pink parliamentarians today. 1, who are you? 2, why did you come? 3, are you doing the work you came here to do? And 4, who walks with you? We each have to do that work to figure those answers to Jackie's questions out for ourselves. It's not work that ever ends either, by the way. But let me come back to this question of movement and suggest that one of those walking with you is Life in Leggings, the Caribbean Alliance Against Gender-Based Violence. It was that brave decision of young women back in 2016, at the time I think it was Ronelle and Alison Ben, to create the hashtag Life in Leggings and offer a space for first-person testimonies that forced a public conversation on sexual harassment and sexual violence right across the Caribbean, insisting that these were issues that matter. I was actually telling students at the University of Guyana just last week about the fact that in 2020, some 50 women were killed in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of gender-based violence. Between February and October of just this year, close to a dozen women had already lost their lives in Guyana. In Puerto Rico, the governor declared a state of emergency in relation to gender-based violence about 2 years ago. But crucially, Life in Leggings got picked up across the region and even in the diaspora, and it would move offline the following year, when in March 2017, in commemoration of International Women's Day, organizations and individuals took to the streets in 6 Caribbean countries. I think it was meant to be 7, but Dominica had a flood and so couldn't participate. But they took to the streets in a coordinated series of women-led and survivor-centered solidarity marches and demonstrations. In the Bahamas, there were speeches on the women's suffrage movement, on the significance of women's participation in the formal political process. There were solicitations of assistance for survivors of a recent fire in the country's capital. There was art therapy and self-defense workshops. In Guyana, activists called for accessible reproductive healthcare, for comprehensive sex education, something Gaiza spoke about in her presentation tonight, and for LGBTQ rights, while actions in Trinidad and Tobago emphasized issues of consent and of women's economic empowerment. The largest gathering that brought thousands of people into the streets took place in Jamaica and was organized by the Tambourine Army, which was formed after a group coming out of women's and queer activist circles decided to take collective action following reports of the sexual abuse of women and girls by religious leaders, young people who were just plain fed up with laws that seemed to protect the powerful and with a legal system that still could not deliver justice. Remember that these were primarily young women and girls, just like all of you, taking the lead, refusing to small up themselves, insisting on taking up space, courageously putting themselves and their bodies out there. And going public with your stories of harassment and violence is no small feat, especially in the era of social media, with its capacity to amplify things in ways that can be empowering, but also devastatingly violent. These young people forced a conversation about sexual violence onto the local and regional agenda. And this is what leadership looks like. And we must always keep returning to the source, to the work that made everything else possible, the conversations that then saw connections across gender and sexual and economic violence, that made links between violence and marginalization, that recognized that to do something, questions of political power had to be tackled. This was the condition of possibility for Pink Parliament, which brings you together today. And I want to remind you to hold on to that as you identify and resist any efforts to narrow your own aspirations. So look for inspiration among your ancestors and elders, and also find it in the incredible instances of girls and young women standing up and speaking truth to power right now, which certainly gives me hope in these difficult times, what in Guyana we would describe as the hard guava season. There are so many examples all around us. I find myself these days waking up in the mornings and going in search of the Iranian schoolgirls who are refusing to be silent following the brutal death in police custody of 22-year-old Kurdish student Masa Amini, taking to the streets, putting their bodies on the line with the slogan, "Women, Life, Freedom," even in the face of ongoing state repression and violence, and the killing since then of 16-year-old Nika Shakrami and 16-year-old Serena Ismailzadeh. This is what courage looks like. I find myself thinking about the young girls and women on the front lines of environmental activism in this time of existential crisis, with regions like ours particularly vulnerable and under threat. Names like Severn Cullis Suzuki from Canada, who attended and addressed the United Nations Climate Conference in Rio de Janeiro 30 years ago, a few years after the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was established, and she was just 12 years old at the time. Today, others like Vanessa Nakate of Uganda, Greta Thunberg of Sweden, the school children walking out of school all over the world are leading the fight for climate justice. This is what vision looks like. I'm thinking about right here in our own hemisphere, folks like Marielle Franco, the Black queer Brazilian politician, human rights defender, councilwoman who was viciously assassinated in 2018 by those who did not think her voice should be heard, and those who follow her who are not backing down. And we just saw this in the first round of the Brazilian elections, where the first trans woman has been elected to Congress, as well as in the indigenous women and social movement leaders. Or in Colombia, where Francia Marquez has become the country's first Afro-descendant vice president, a woman whose public life began at the age of 13 when she challenged the building of a dam in her community. Or the young women and genderqueer activists across Latin America who have made femicide, the starting point of their activism, but who do not stop there, who are pushing us to make connections between violence against women, violence against children, and the wider violence of societies like ours, organized around extractive, non-sustainable, and deeply exploitative relationships with the land and with more than human life. These young people are pushing for the most fundamental conversations of all, challenging us to imagine a world in which, as George Lamming has said, our relations with each other and with all living things is revolutionized, driven not by profit, but by principles and values of care. This is a commitment to transformation, not just tinkering at the margins. It's more than just demanding a seat at the table. It's asking questions about whether that's the damn table we want to be at in the first place. And pink parliamentarians, it begins with you, but it touches everyone. As Guyanese social activist Tandai has said, quote, "You can begin organizing at any point. If you do it right, it will lead you to every other point." So in closing, let me return to your theme, girls can lead, redefining leadership. So I'm a teacher, right? If this were a class, I would have you all in here for like 2 hours, taking apart just those 5 words, putting that sentence back together, studying each word, taking your time and care with taking care of that sentence. I should emphasize that's also a political practice of taking time and care with what you say and what you put out in the world. For me, those 5 words are a statement full of confidence in the bold-faced capacity of girls and young women to step up and take the reins to organize. Girls can lead. It says to us not only that it is possible, girls can lead, but that there are examples, rich histories, and wellsprings of experience to draw from. It's a statement that tells us of the work to be done. It suggests that the involvement of girls offers opportunities to challenge what leadership is, what it consists of, what it looks like. And just your very presence, know this, just your very presence calls into question traditional understandings of who is a leader. And it serves crucially to remind us that redefining leadership is a continual challenge. It is therefore a call for us to keep questioning that critical thinking that Ayana referred to in her comments tonight, to never feel or act as if you have arrived or as if you have all the answers. You know, years ago, someone shared with me a remarkable and hilarious insight from your own mighty Gabby, that Calypsonian and griot. And it was along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, and he said, "You see the Prime Minister face on the front page of the morning newspaper? By nighttime, that same front page wrapping up the fresh fish that say Miss Boston taking down to Baxter Road for the fish fry." I love that aphorism. I've shared it so many times because it's a perfect reminder that humility counts, never leading from ego, working always not to center the I or the me. And through the figure of Miss Boston, that fish fry lady that Gabby invokes, it shows us where the real value, the life-giving sustenance that we rely upon comes from, to whom we are answerable and accountable. I want to suggest that this is the real lesson of politics and power for you as you set out upon this work with your cohort, with 4 generations of graduates from the Pink Parliament, and with all of the incredible mentors that you will be meeting, working with, learning from, and also teaching over the next months. Huge congratulations to you. And please remember the joy and the fun in this work as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elisa Trotz. That was quite a moving speech. I feel very empowered listening to it myself. And I think that your speech was very cross-sectional. And I think that it touched on a lot of different topics that I myself would have heard while I was in Pink Parliament and I've subsequently been in touch with. So thank you so much. Yes, Don Lisa's in the chat, giving a little bit of applause. Okay, now we're turning to Ms. Dominique Morales, and she is going to be giving the closing remarks for tonight's session.
Okay, good evening, everyone. When I start these speeches, I always tell people that I feel like it's a one-sided event because I always feel like I benefit more from all the speeches I would have heard than what I have to contribute, but I'm always very honored to be here. I especially enjoyed Ayana's comparative analysis on the educational landscape in Barbados, Donna Lisa's reflection on the importance of cultural confidence, Shade's comprehensive discourse on the barriers to women's participation in electoral politics, and Gaiza's front dialogue on how important sexual and reproductive health rights are to our overall well-being as communities. I come out of the crop of young leaders in Belize that started off as sexual reproductive health right advocates, so I very much enjoyed that, so very well done. Dr. Elisa Trotz, oh my gosh, when I heard her voice, when I jumped into Zoom, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that voice. You have been such a light to me. In fact, the first book that I bought at university was after a talk that you gave along with my now lecturer, Professor Cynthia Barrow-Giles. It wasn't a book voucher that she gave us. In fact, I have it right here. It was In Search of the Black Fantastic, and you quoted that politics is a contest about what matters, and that has remained an essential part of every part of work that I do. So thank you very much for that. First, I want to congratulate all of you for taking charge of your future and taking part in what is the trademark initiative of the Life in Leggings. Of course, a brother, a sister, an aunt, a grandparent, a teacher, or a friend. You all are invaluable, are doing an invaluable service to the communities from which these girls will come and to which they will go. And finally, of course, thanking the Pink Parliament team for their tireless and undoubtedly passionate work that is done both on scene and the scene work that we see in the front of the public arena. The theme within which this cohort is convening is a reflective one, I think. It is both a reminder and a call to action. It reaffirms the feminist call that indeed girls are positive agents, leaders of self, of community, of nation state, and of world. And the theme is also a challenge for us to utilize that agency that we have, our creativity, our innovative thought, our cognitive and visible diversity to bravely challenge, dismantle, and fashion a new degree of leadership that doesn't engage in the kind of leadership that excludes, but on the contrary, recognizes the role of everyone in creating a world that we want to live in. You see, your role here goes beyond what is expected of you. Of course, you must show up to your sessions on time, but you also must show up knowing that the space being available and accessible is a political marvel in and of itself. Of course, you are to engage fully while sessions are going on, but you are to know that you are coming in contact with people who have access to a certain type and volume of power. You must act, you must speak up to impress on them that you are not just a passive receiver of knowledge, but that you are a dynamic multiplier of the airtime here as cohort 4. But know that after you become an ambassador with a unique set of skills and experiences, coupled with a fervent passion to share that knowledge with your peers and ensure that you are not the last person sitting at a table like this. Even with all that responsibility, your role now, as I see it, is to be present, be your quirky selves, make friends, have fun. You are to put in the work, first and foremost, be genuine with yourself. You must know yourself. I think that is an important part of any political work. You must remain curious. And of course, the rest will simply and almost mystically fall into place. I want to thank you again for having me, Ronelle. It's always very much a pleasure. And to all the young girls, you are very beautiful, and I look forward to engaging with you over the next 6 months on this first formal step on your lifelong journeys as leaders. So thank you very much.
Well, that was an excellent wrapping up of tonight's proceedings. I'd also like to mention that Ms. Dominique is a trustee of Life in Leggings, the Caribbean Alliance Against Gender-Based Violence, and she's the Alumni Relations Officer for Pink Parliament. So thank you so much, Dominique, for wrapping it up so nicely. Now, over to Ms. Latoya Charles, who is the Administrative Assistant, Project Assistant really, for Pink Parliament, and she will give the vote of thanks.
Good evening. Please allow me to once more adopt the protocol that has been established. It is my honor to deliver the vote of thanks this evening. This cohort launch we just witnessed is the start of a very exciting journey for our new Pink parliamentarians. Your attendance this evening says to us that you have bought into the vision carried by Life in Leggings. And I, on behalf of our director, our founder, and the entire team, would like to express our appreciation for your presence and your participation. The work has now begun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have come to the end of quite an evening, but it's just the beginning for cohort 4. So I'd also like to thank everyone who's taken time out tonight to come and attend this session. You can go ahead and do the little reactions at the bottom. Give a round of applause for all of the speakers. And back over to you, Ronald. Any last words?
Thank you so much. I just want to reiterate all of what was said. You know, this is a phenomenal experience that you guys will see. And all I ask is that you lean into what has offered to you, take and give, you know, just take and give love. So enjoy the rest of your night, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday. As Latoya said, the work begins. Bye.
Bye.